Locked on Steelers Thursday here. We're going to talk more about Arthur Smith and why 12 personnel could be the key to the Steelers offense being a lot better. We'll do that, take your calls, and give our final grades on the cornerbacks from the season. I'm Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs is the place that you got to go to find qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Now, we want to get into a lot of things here. We're going to explore a lot of different things when it comes to Arthur Smith. And we're going to talk about the quarterback aspect of this soon. But I was doing some research. You know, I'm just me. When I get things, I start rattling numbers around, I start rattling film around. And one thing that I noticed a lot of when I studied Arthur Smith offenses was the usage of 12 personnel and how important that was. And why I think that could really be a match for who the Steelers have on their roster right now. Of course, if you don't know, 12 personnel means one running back, two tight ends, which also implies two wide receivers. So when you say 12 personnel, that means you're coming out double tight end with a running back with two wide receivers. That was something the Steelers, I think, should have used a lot more this year. We'll get into how much they used it. But if you're wondering what's the benefit here, the Steelers, with that personnel package, you're talking about with the Steelers as they're constructed right now, they could add players in free agency in the draft. But that would mean Pat Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Najee Harris, or Jaylen Warren in the backfield. That package, I think, has a ton of possibilities with the combination of running and throwing the ball to keep defenses on the guessing of what the Steelers are going to do. And it's something that I think good teams do use when they have good tight ends, and I think the Steelers do have good tight ends. So how much did Arthur Smith use 12 personnel? Well, I did some number crunching, did some research on this. In his time with the Titans from 2019 to 2020, Arthur Smith loved 12 personnel. In 2019, they used it the fifth most of any team in the NFL. In 2020, they used it the second most, only behind the Eagles. They had the most rushing yards in 2020 with it, and the third most rushing yards in 2019. This is, again, rushing yards just with 12 personnel in the way that they used them. Also, with 12 personnel, they also had the fifth most passing yards in 2019 and the second most passing yards out of 12 personnel in 2020. It was a core part of their offense. It was how they kept teams saying, oh, man, we got to worry about Jonnu Smith and another tight end and Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown. That's where you try to get people in mismatches, because you try to say, hey, can your linebackers run with our athletic tight ends, and can your defensive backs stick them or stick with them in the run game? It's going to force personnel mismatches, and that's what the Steelers really need to get back to doing more on offense. It also became a theme with the Falcons, where it didn't stick right away. In 2021, when Arthur Smith joined the Falcons, they had the 12th most 12 personnel packages. But in 2022, they were number 5. In 2023, they were the number 1 12 personnel team as far as usage. And I think that needs to be a feature of the Steelers. Now, we did see the Steelers use 3 tight end sets a lot with Hayward, Washington, and Freiermuth. And that was not, they used it the 9th most in the NFL, but they didn't use 12 personnel packages, in my opinion, nearly enough. They were 21st in 12 personnel usage in 2023, and they were 21st in rushing yards out of 12 personnel and 24th in passing yards out of 12 personnel. That needs to improve with the players that they have on their roster. Again, Freiermuth, Washington, Hayward, these are guys who look solid, and Freiermuth looked like he improved as a blocker as the year went on. Darnell Washington came in as a good blocker and I think got better. So did Connor Hayward in the different ways that they use these guys. Arthur Smith, one of his biggest challenges for the Steelers, needs to not only be able to how to channel them into running plays, but also into more passing plays. And with the Falcons in 2023, they had the most passing yards out of 12 personnel last year, and the third most rushing yards out of 12 personnel. And again, this is just one part of the offense, but this can be a key feature of your offense that makes everything else that much easier. And maybe that could be an asset for the Steelers. We know Freiermuth has been gotten better as a blocker, but he's definitely been underused as a receiving threat, just as Darnell Washington has. Smith is known for, Arthur Smith is known in, one of the reputations that he's bringing out of his time with Atlanta, not getting the ball to the Falcons' big playmakers like Drake London. And a lot of people talked about how he's kind of wasted Kyle Pitts. But in the last 3 years combined, when you combine all the tight end stats, for 3 years, Kyle Pitts has the 7th most receiving yards among NFL tight ends. Pat Freiermuth during that time, 15th, and they came in the NFL at the same time. The key for the Steelers to get better uses there will also be having dominant offensive line play, because the key there is also not only would you need your tight ends to play well, but you need your offensive line to bully people at the line of scrimmage, which the Steelers started to do in the second half of the season, pretty consistently. From week 9 on, the Steelers had the second best rushing offense in the NFL, only behind the Ravens as far as total yardage. And then I even accounted for, taking bye weeks into account, because, from week 9 on, some people have their byes later than that. And when I totaled it, I think it was the Ravens and the Lions had the most rushing yards per game in their last 10 games. And then it was the Steelers, and right behind them was the 49ers and the Bills. So that's all pretty good company: Ravens, Lions, Niners, Bills, as far as rushing production. But again, that was when they found the personnel package with Broderick Jones. They were starting to get that out there. This still doesn't account for the struggles that they went through with, the fact that the offense wasn't humming under Matt Canada, and even in its early days without Matt Canada, also wasn't doing a whole lot. That's where the Steelers can take a real step forward. And if Arthur Smith can get them pointed in that direction to do a lot of the things they did with the Titans to do well, that can make the world of difference for both the run game and the passing game, because the run game's clicking, play action is going to be there. Kenny Pickett had good play action numbers last year. And if you look at that, I think that can allow for easier plays for him to kind of get settled, find his groove in the NFL. And then when he's at a more comfortable level, everything gets that much easier. That's what helped Ryan Tannehill turn his career around. So I think the Steelers, they need to add more on the offensive line. They need a better center. They need another tackle to pair with Broderick Jones that's better than Dan Moore. And one guy who continues to impress at the Senior Bowl, turned heads for a second day in a row, is Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon. We talked about him a little bit on yesterday's episode with Alan Saunders. Based off of the things that I had read going into the Senior Bowl, Jackson Powers Johnson was like a mid-second round pick. The Steelers may need to trade up to get him there if they really want him, but he would be a good option. But now it's looking like he might be a first round pick, just because that's the way that's how good he's been there, and people are really excited about the way he's controlling opponents in the middle of the line. That could be huge. Now that shouldn't make you ignore guys like Zach Frazier, who could be there in the second round, but still, those are good things to have on your side there if you're trying to find a center. And there's plenty of tackles. There's a deep tackle class that you could probably still find a guy in the second round that would really work for yourself. So to fix their problems, I think the Steelers could be, if they fix those problems, if they add to the offensive line in the way I think they should, the Steelers could be in the perfect situation for their personnel wise to lean on 12 personnel to open up the run and the pass, keep defenses guessing, and make things easier for Kenny Pickett to be a quarterback, to be a game manager, and put their playmakers in better situations to get easier yards instead of running into stacked boxes, instead of running into linebackers that are only looking for the run. Keeping defenses on their heels is one of the main things that offensive coordinators have to do. They didn't do that nearly enough, I think, consistently last year. I think you saw in those last 4 games or so, you saw defenses not be able to just attack the line of scrimmage when the Steelers ran the ball, and that allowed the Steelers to run better, which helped the Steelers throw better, and then they started to find their balance in those last 3 games. So they still need better quarterback play. They still need Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph, if he's re-signed, to raise the level of what's expected from the Steelers at quarterback. But if you do all these things well around a quarterback, they're a lot more likely to play that much better. Again, Kenny Pickett was trying to figure his way into the offense. He only got a game and a half after they let go of Matt Canada to really show what he was improving on after they made that move. And that's where I think that things have to take a step forward. But hey, again, if you're wondering about Arthur Smith, look at what he did for Ryan Tannehill's career. When it was a first-round pick for the Dolphins, didn't work out for them, came to the Titans. Everyone thought that was a joke of a hire. All of a sudden, he's making Pro Bowl. He's being, there were times he was talking about being an MVP conversation. I said that was crazy when people were saying that, but still, he deserved to get the credit that he was getting in those games for the way that he was playing. Maybe the Steelers can do the same thing for Kenny Pickett with more of the 12 personnel usage that opens up the run and the pass and maximizes the value the Steelers have created with their own draft picks at tight end and running back and wide receiver, along with this improving offensive line. There's a lot more ways to look at Arthur Smith, and we'll look at quarterback stuff. We'll look at more things as we continue to study them as time moves on. But the 12 personnel package, that could be a real big key for the Steelers. Keep an eye on that as we continue through the offseason as far as what they try to add to on their offense in moving forward. But we got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to take your calls. There have been a lot of you calling in to the show. We'll get into those calls and talk about them. I'm going to try at least take 4 on this show, and that's still not even cutting down a third of how many of y'all have been calling in that I have been able to get on the show. We couldn't do any yesterday because of the Arthur Smith hire, but we will get to a bunch of them today and get to my final grades on the cornerbacks. All this here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You need the right people on your team to help your small business fire in all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find people you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile. Spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you could quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We're also brought to you by DoorDash. When you're getting ready for the Super Bowl, you don't want to be ready on an empty stomach. You want to make sure that you have the goods right in front of you, and that's the best food that you can get delivered right to your door. The best way to do that is with DoorDash. You can order pizza, wings, pop, burgers, anything that you want ready for the big game can be delivered to you right now with DoorDash. If you're a Pittsburgher, sometimes you want a good permane sandwich with fries and a coleslaw. Though I don't do the coleslaw. The coleslaw is kind of nasty, so don't get the coleslaw because I'm just telling you. But permanes itself still pretty good. Me, sometimes I get some big shot Bob's wings delivered right to my door. I get the Frank White sauce. It's going to be hitting. I might, in fact, do that for the Super Bowl, but the best place to do that is to get it delivered via DoorDash. Right now, you can get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED24 here. From Locked On. Subject to change, terms and conditions apply. Want even more value? You can save all your money and you can save all your grocery and your restaurant favorites with a $10 delivery fee on all eligible orders with a Dash Pass member. Excuse me, not a $10, a $0 delivery fee on all eligible orders with a Dash Pass membership. Get prepared on game day. Stock up on your favorite appetizers and order all your tailgate gear on DoorDash. Then get ready to watch the Super Bowl and enjoy a big game. Again, 50% off on your first order of DoorDash when you order up to a $15 value. Make sure you use code LOCKEDONNFL at checkout. Don't forget 50% off there. And again, code LOCKEDONNFL at checkout. Subject to change, terms and conditions apply. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, where you continue with the show here. And I said, we get to your calls here. As always, you can call into the number at 412-223-6644 for the call line to get your questions on the air. And we're going to start with a question here from our good friend of ours, Andrew, who's called into the show multiple times before. And he has a question about the offensive line and with Darnell Washington. I figured that'd be a relevant place to segue from, considering we were just talking about 12 personnel usage. Here's Andrew.
Hello, Chris. This is Andrew from Plains, Pennsylvania. And I have an interesting thought. We need a couple offensive linemen, but there is one thing that has been crossing my mind as of late, and that is, do you think we may have already found our left and right tackle in this past draft? And what I mean by that is, obviously Broderick Jones was supposed to be the left tackle, but he was moved to the right side. Do you think that Darnell Washington could be the right tackle, since he is a great blocker? We are a running team. He knows how to block for the run. He could just be taught the other stuff about pass protection. Let me know what you think. Love the show. Keep up the great work.
Thank you for your question, Andrew. Always appreciate everyone to call in, especially Andrew. He calls in a lot. We have a few others that call in a lot as well. But I wanted to get to Andrew's point here. So I think that if the Steelers took the time, told Darnell Washington way ahead of time, like, hey, like right now, maybe even right now, like, hey, we would like to see you at offensive tackle, Washington would have to add weight. He'd have to get bigger. He'd have to get stronger. He'd have to change his play type because there's a lot of things he'd have to do. He has the right height. He has the right arm length to play offensive tackle. But they also just spent a year trying to get him to improve as a tight end. I doubt that they'd spend the next year trying to change him out of that. I think that the best thing to do is make him the second tight end. Go get a big, mean, nasty, high-graded offensive tackle in this year's draft class. And there's quite a few of them. I know that what you're thinking is probably saying, hey, the Steelers have a lot of needs. What if they alleviate one of those needs by going and getting and making one of their players one of their needs right now? But I feel like that would be an experiment that would be wasted, because here's the thing: you don't know if Darnell Washington turns into a really good tackle, and and right now, if you take him out of the lineup, you need a second tight end, or you're putting Connor Hayward at the second tight end position, and you need a third tight end. But I think right now, with what we just talked about with the 12 personnel usage, you'd much prefer Darnell Washington to be your number 2 tight end option who continues to grow at that position, and going and getting a pure offensive tackle that you got out of the draft who develops with your team, develops with Broderick Jones, and then become a dominant 1-2 punch. I like your thinking to be versatile, but I think that that's not the way to go for the Steelers offense. Just me, though. But let's talk about some of those. Andrew from North Carolina got a question on the Steelers' plans at the draft.
Hey, Chris Carter. This is Andrew Bonestall from upstate New York. I just want to start off by saying I love your show. Keep doing it. And my question is, even though there's still free agency, who do you think we should go after with our first-round pick? Do you think a center? Do you think a cornerback? Anyways, hope you have a great day, man. Look forward to hearing you on the show.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much, Andrew. Appreciate the question. Excuse me. Yeah, both Andrews. Jeez, I just realized that. Yeah, 2 Andrews to start the show. But shout out to Andrew there. But I think you got some good questions. Now, the thing about the Steelers' targets, I think clear needs that are identified right now, and he's right. Things could change with free agency. Center's right at the top of the list. Offensive tackle's right at the top of the list. Cornerback's right at the top of the list. I'd say linebacker is also something they should watch for. I would also throw in interior defensive line, because I think they need another dominant presence there long term, along with Keanu Benton. I would rank that behind the others, because I think with Hayward and Ogunjobi and Benton, that's at least a solid group for now. And if you find a guy that just falls through the cracks and you're like, whoa, that's our guy, that's a different story. But right now, I think there's a big priority is being placed on the offensive line. And heck, you can kind of see it with who Mike Tomlin and the Steelers staff who are at the Senior Bowl are kind of prioritizing talking to the most, because it's other offensive linemen. So looking through things here, I think guys that could be there at 20, there's a few offensive linemen that are going to fly off the board. Joe Alt from Notre Dame, Olu Fashanu of Penn State. Those are 2 guys that are expected to be off kind of quickly. And then Talles Fuaga out of Oregon State. Those 3 guys should be gone by the time that the picks hit 15. But then when the Steelers when you're getting close to 20, that's where it could get very interesting. You got guys out there, multiple players who I think that could be there, and guys who are working their way up. As Alan Saunders said on the show yesterday, and I think he had another good day today, Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma was kind of considered a 2nd-round pick. Now he's creeping into that 1st-round territory that teams are going to be looking at him, including J.C. Latham and out of Alabama, and Jordan Morgan out of Arizona. But there was a specific question by another one of our listeners, David from Pittsburgh, who wanted to ask about one offensive tackle, and that was Amarius Mims out of Georgia. Here's David's question.
This is David Hopkins. See you. Hey, how you doing there, Chris? Man, I have a question for you, my man. I've been checking out the mock drafts for the Pittsburgh Steelers already, and they're already saying that they're drafting an offensive tackle from Georgia. Well, my question to you, my CU brother, who do you think that the Steelers going to get for their number one draft pick, man? Who you think they're going to pick in their 20th? I believe they picked 20th for the upcoming draft. So get back to you, my man. Get back to me. Much love to you. See you.
See you. Got a Chain University grad on the call. Thanks, Dave. I would appreciate my brother out there. Chain University, the first HBCU and my alma mater. Always proud to come from that place. Shout out to the Chain University Wolves. And shout out to David there. But let's get to David's question. Amarius Mims. Now, upsides of Demarius Mims. Again, Georgia, kind of very much like Broderick Jones. Not, I think, is a high grade. Broderick Jones, I think, has higher ceilings, but 6'7", 340, highly athletic, pretty raw. You like those things, right? Like you're fine. Like, listen, like outside of the raw things, you want guys to be more grown, more well-rounded in their experience, but a guy who can dominate, who can move across the line, who can get to the second level, who can use their long arms to keep you from getting into their frames and can dominate you at the line of scrimmage. The Steelers want guys like that. So I like Mims. Some people are going to mock him to the Steelers. A lot of people are going to mock a lot of different players over the next 3 months. It's just going to happen. We're not doing mock drafts Mondays until after the Super Bowl. So don't ask me about mock draft Mondays until after the Super Bowl. Then we'll start those. So I know there's a lot of people that love mock draft Mondays every year where everyone sends me like 1 billion mock drafts. I pick one, I go through your picks and we talk about them. That's always a fun time, but we take time until we get there because we're about to do them every day for the next months. Anyways, I like this tackle class. I think there's guys that are sneaking up there. There's Troy Fautano out of Washington. He's a little bit, shorter on the 6'4" range. Kieran, I'm going to mess this guy's name up. Kieran Amagaje. I just butchered that man's name. He's another guy there. Sua Mataya from BYU. Patrick Paul from Houston. There's a lot of different candidates out there. And heck, Pitt has a guy, Matt Gonsalves. He was hurt this past year, but I covered Matt Gonsalves, and he's a pretty solid player if they could get him maybe in the 3rd round or so. So I think that the Steelers, they need guys there. But I got to tell you, if 20 rolls around and we're looking at the tackles, and it's not like, if a guy like Fuaga, or one of those top tackles hasn't fallen, I'm sorry, I'm running and grabbing me some Jackson Powers Johnson, because center is such a big position that Steelers need, I think, to boost their roster right now that would solve so many problems. And Jackson Powers Johnson looks like that guy. I like the way he's playing. I like how physical he is, the way he uses his hands, the way he uses his feet. He could play center and guard. So, say if you got another center at some point and you wanted to move him around, you could do that too. But I like him a lot. And that's not to say they should definitely just get Jackson Powers Johnson, because I like Zach Frazier out of West Virginia too. But I like Jackson Powers Johnson a little bit more, and I think that he would be worth the first round stab at 20th overall, just based off of what I've seen so far. I've only studied 1 or 2 of his games. I'm going to study more. That's why you don't see me throw out these really early big boards. A lot of the guys who do that, they're draft experts who study this all year long. During the season, I am covering Steelers and Pitt football and Pitt basketball. So I don't got time to just do NFL draft research until the season's over, and it gives me more time to review things. But when I do develop a big board, we talk about it here on the show. I break it down for you. I give you my rankings and everything. So we'll get there on those guys. But Amarius Mims, certainly one of the guys that the Steelers could be looking at in the first round. Jackson Powers Johnson certainly rising up the board. One last question here. This one comes from Mark Bennett on Minkah Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, hi, Chris. My name is Mark Bennett. And my question is regarding Minkah Fitzpatrick. After just watching the Kansas City game, they were referring to Kyle Hamilton a lot. And my question is how you probably saw it, but how Hamilton might resemble Floyd Polamalu, the way he came in and stopped that tackle. I mean, stopped that run, the way Polamalu used to. My question is, I personally don't see that what makes Fitzpatrick so good. I know that he's not the same type of safety as Polamalu was, but maybe you can explain like what makes him so great. I mean, I assume that he's playing the same position Ed Reed played on Baltimore's defense, but Reed would intercept a heck of a lot more passes and disrupt games that way. And I'm not seeing the same thing, like what is exactly his value. And that's why I was thinking, like, I might even be entertaining a trade for him. But thank you very much for your time, Chris. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mark, for your question. Appreciate everyone who calls in. Again, 412-223-6644 to get your question on the show. Leave your name, where you're from, and keep your question under a minute, and we'll get you on the show. Mark, I think you might have some recency bias there. I know Minkah Fitzpatrick didn't make any interceptions this year, but, man, he's been a bad man when he's been on the field for the Steelers. Just last year, he led the NFL with 6 interceptions in three of his one. So he's been with the Steelers since 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. So we're looking at 5 seasons. In 3 of those 5 seasons, he's had 4 or more interceptions in those. That's a pretty good rate. Ed Reed had plenty of seasons like that. I think he had like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He had 7 in his very long career. So I think Minkah Fitzpatrick, and I've told this to Nick Farabaugh before of SteelersNow.com. I think Minkah Fitzpatrick, a very good comparison, is Ed Reed. Now, I'm not sure if he's going to finish out as a Hall of Famer like Ed Reed. I think he's been on the path. If he has another couple All-Pro years, he will be there. But this is a 3-time first-team All-Pro safety. He flies all over the field. He communicates. He hits hard. He breaks up passes. He knows where to be at the right points of the game. Minkah Fitzpatrick is a dog. You want him in your secondary. He is absolutely going to make plays. I think that if you're having some recency bias because he didn't have an interception this year, I understand. You want to see results now. But, man, I think Minkah Fitzpatrick still got it. Just seeing the way that guy works, that guy practices. At the end of every training camp practice, that guy, the Steelers would do all their things, and they would do all their stuff. They'd sign all the things. We'd have to wait like an hour for Minkah Fitzpatrick because he would always be doing just drills on his own, certain things, just hand-eye coordination or footwork or looking at things or trying different, trying to make sure to stack up certain personnel groupings and different things. He was just he's an insane workhorse. He has a great work ethic, and he's a leader that the Steelers need on their team. He's also a guy who I think he loves football so much. He's probably going to be a coach when he hangs it up, and I think he's going to be a pretty good one because his attention to detail is insane. Don't be dismayed by Minkah Fitzpatrick getting 0 interceptions this past year. Look back and see how much he's done for the Steelers over time. Again, 5 interceptions in 2019, 4 interceptions in 2020, 6 interceptions in 2022. Only had 2 in 2021. And that was lesser, but still was a huge part of that season. Also made 124 tackles that year. I think the big key for the Steelers, get him back to playing true free safety, not strong safety. That he did a lot of extra strong safety stuff this year. They need to go get guys in the safety field like that, maybe like a Tyler Nubin, a Cameron Kinchins, Javon Bullard, guys like that. I think you get extra safeties on the field, you help him out a lot. But we got to talk more. We'll talk more about Minkah Fitzpatrick as time rolls on. I want to get to my final grades at cornerback here for the Pittsburgh Steelers and on this season. We'll do all that here on a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, we'll remind you this show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. The easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros, sharks, and a whole bunch of people in assembling lineups, all you're doing with Prize Picks is you're assembling a lineup of 2 to 6 players where you just look at their stat projections that Prize Picks give you, and you win by simply guessing right on saying more or less. It's that easy. No picking entire lineups. Just say more or less on 2 to 6 players, and you can watch your winnings roll in. And Prize Picks is the new fun daily fantasy game everyone has to try. You can even combine players from different leagues. Like if you think in the Super Bowl, the Chiefs are going to go off for a whole bunch of points, and you want to put it on Isaiah Pacheco, say that he's going to get more than 1.5 touchdowns in the game. Or if you think that, and you're going to combine that with, say, I don't know, Steph Curry's how many 3-pointers he makes in the game. You can set lineups like that in their specials league on Prize Picks. There's so many ways to win. Also, Prize Picks also has a reboot policy where with all NFL games, if a player is lost in the first half to injury, that player is rebooted in the second half, keeping your lineup alive. Prize Picks offers weekly promotions. They also offer injury insurance. That's the best daily fantasy sports platform out there. NFL, NBA, NHL, college sports, all the different ways to win. Download the Prize Picks app today or go to prizepicks.com to sign up. When you get there, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Again, code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our show here. We get to our final grades on the cornerbacks on the season. We got to make this a little bit short because I'm running short on time. Went over on some things. Apologize for that. But hey, we wanted to get all your calls in because we're getting a lot of calls. But let's get to the cornerback grades. Just a quick disclaimer. I didn't have any stars or skulls for James Pierre, so he's a straight neutral C. Also not sure if he's going to be with the team next year. We'll see what happens with that. So we start with some of the guys that came onto the team to help and did get some stars and skulls grades. We start with Darius Rush, who came onto the field. I gave him a C grade because all season long he didn't have any games where he had stars, so he had 0 stars. Did have 2 skulls. I think it was just 2 different 1 skull performances, but ultimately didn't crush the Steelers at any point in time. I thought he gave some relief at times. Thought he miscommunicated at others. He's a guy with long length who could be in an interesting part of the rotation next year if he takes a year to train. And Corey Trice, you could have 3 guys in Joey Porter Jr., Corey Trice, and Darius Rush, who I think are in like the 6'3" in as far as height range. You could have, long, tall, athletic corners in your secondary being a big part of things. He's a developmental guy for sure. No guarantee thing that he'll work out, but at least someone to have good coming back to training camp next year. We move along the line to the Steelers slot cornerback, and that was Shandon Sullivan. On the year, another C, 4 stars, 6 skulls. But I will say this, he flip-turned his entire season midway through the year, because early on he was racking up skulls in the early parts of the weeks. He got those 4 stars pretty much all in the last month and a half or so. When he started, I think he grew into understanding where he needed to be and when he needed to be there. That was a good sign. Maybe keep him around, see if he could continue developing. He could at least be an answer there, unless you find someone else that you think is a better fit at slot cornerback. But Shandon Sullivan, again, a C grade on the season. Now we start to face some of the other the Steelers starting outside cornerbacks. Levi Wallace started the year as a starter and lost his spot eventually to Joey Porter Jr. I gave him a D- on the year. He never was bad enough to get a bus ticket, but only 4 stars in the year and 13 skulls. There were just so many times that Levi was beat throughout the year, and not for not trying. I think he was a guy that was always giving a high level effort, but he has a clear lack of speed, and that's a problem when you're the outside cornerback. And it's fine, I think, when you have everything else going well around you. I think he made up for that in 2022 by making, I think he had 4 interceptions or so that year. He made some big plays. He didn't make as many of those big plays this year, and he got beat on enough big plays that hurt the Steelers. So D- on the year. I do doubt that Levi Wallace returns next year, though he did give the Steelers some important snaps in relief moments. The Steelers need to invest at cornerback, I think, to add more talent to this room to make it more so complete. And part of that will be an interesting question: do they keep Patrick Peterson? Because he had a good year, in my opinion. Patrick Peterson, my final grade for him was a B- because he had 15 stars and 10 skulls. Yes, there were plenty of times that he got beat in games, but he became an asset to the Steelers in certain points. There were times where he was just in the right place at the right time, created right turnovers. You think back to the Bengals game with his interception. He had his interception against the Raiders. Those moments I thought were important for the Steelers and in some of the wins that they needed to get where they got this season. And he also provided sound play. And then when you moved into safety, he was solid there too. Now, I'm not sure if you'd want him at safety full time. It's still something I think that the Steelers need to answer for themselves. But also his cap hit is going to be about around $10 million this upcoming season. I'm not sure if he's worth all of that at this age, as he's going to be even older, but I think he had a B- grade on the season, which is a solid day for a starting cornerback. If you have in B-level play in guys, that helps. But granted, I think that also you want to have more than B- level play from guys that make this kind of money. That being said, the top cornerback for the team was obviously the rookie and a fan favorite, and a guy who I gave really good marks for on the season. That was Joey Porter Jr. 18 stars, only 3 skulls in the season. That's good enough for A- grade according to our grading scale here. Also, no bus tickets among the Steelers cornerbacks. That's a really good sign. But Joey Porter Jr., this guy, came in he only got one interception, but he showed people that, hey, there was a reason why he felt like he was a first round pick. And maybe he would have been if the Dolphins didn't have to forfeit their pick because they got caught breaking the rules. But the Steelers made him the 32nd overall pick. And man, did the Steelers get a steal with that, at least in his rookie season. I think Joey Porter Jr. is well on his way to having a great career. He knows how to lock down guys. He can play man very well. Looks like I think the biggest thing that he needs to work on is understanding how to and when to be physical. There were times that he drew penalties from doing that. But sometimes you're like, hey, you know what? Let the young guy work. Let him learn how to be physical at the right times. That's where he has to get better at. I think that he will get better at that. The guy seemed like a very studious type of player. With the way that he studied opponents, he faced big name wide receivers like DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Amari Cooper, just all the way down the line. Odell Beckham Jr. He faced a lot of these guys, and I think that he stood up well against them. Heck, I thought he didn't do a bad job even in the playoff game. So that being said, I think Joey Porter Jr. A- of a season, that's as good as you could ask from a rookie. Heck of a year for him, and he's going to be leading that cornerback room moving forward. And the Steelers, I think, need to add to that cornerback room. They need to add some more youth there. Maybe Corey Trice is part of the answer, but I wouldn't be shocked if they go at some of the cornerbacks in this draft class, or if they even make another splash ad in free agency. We'll see what they do as time moves on. I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in here to the Locked On Steelers podcast. You can find me on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube, rated 5 stars on Apple Podcasts with a positive comment. You do both at the same time. We get you a shout out on the show. Thanks again to everyone who called in to 412-223-6644 to get your question on the show. And thanks again to all those who enjoy us on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our Monday through Friday episodes, daily episodes throughout the week, including our bonus episodes like our reaction episode to the Arthur Smith hire. Back Friday with more on your Pittsburgh Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.